Umalusi is seriously concerned about the group copying cases that have been detected by the DBE in 2023, which involves 945 national senior certificate candidates. These cases are not yet resolved because the numbers are still being verified. Of the total 763 cases, which is 80.7%, were detected in KwaZulu-Natal, and 164 cases, which constitute 17.7%, were detected in Mpumalanga.
Having studied all the evidence presented, Exco of Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the regulations pertaining to the conduct, administration, and management of the National Senior Certificate examinations. The irregularities identified during the writing and marking of the examinations were not systemic and therefore did not compromise the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2023 National Senior Certificate examinations administered by the Department of Basic Education.
This and the state of education in our country, we are now joined via video link by Professor Nicky Roberts, Associate Professor from the University of Stellenbosch. Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. So in the main, Umalusi has given the 2023 National Senior Certificate exams the green light and is reporting, though, that there were no paper leaks, during the exams. He does, however, cite concerns like, as you've heard in that clip, group copying, certificate fraud, printing errors, and poor translation quality in some exam papers. How do how do these issues, particularly the concerning ones, impact on the quality of the paper and, in fact, the credibility of Umalusi's assurance process, do you think?
Well, I think fundamentally the fact that Umalusi knows about those things and is reporting transparently about them so that we know the detail. They have explicitly excluded those students who've been found to be group copying. So in that case, it's that our system is robust. It finds these problems, reports on them on television, like has just happened, and those students are excluded. In other words, they won't be passing. Where there have been some concerns, I think, in relation to the setting of exam papers has come up in civil technology. So one of the courses with woodwork, construction and civil services, really unacceptable, the number of errors that have been in those papers. I think it was reported 60 marks in some, 30 in others. And that really is concerning, but it is a small and quite minority subject area. With regard to the issuing of fake certificates, that's something that, again, Umalusi is drawing our attention to. As South African citizens, we need to know that our certificates are important. They can't be issued and paid for by a DHET official, which is the case that's happened here. That official has been arrested. Our systems are working.
Let's just talk about the issue of group copying. KZN, we understand, accounts for about 80.7%. That's of the total of 763 cases. And in Mpumalanga, 17.7% of the 164 cases. How does this affect Umalusi's commitment, to maintaining high standards in the educational system, especially in these two provinces where these cases have been identified?
Yeah, so I think from Umalusi's side, the fact that they found them, acted on them and excluded all of those scripts shows that the integrity of our national certificates is holding. I do hope that there is follow-up criminally with the educators involved in that. It's very difficult to have a group copying experience without a teacher facilitating that group copying. And so I would expect to see educators being implicated, being removed from the teaching profession. It's more Umalusi's position to point these things out, and then it's up to the relevant employment body, I think in this case the DBE, to act against the perpetrators. Group copying can't be done without the facilitation of a teacher, and all eyes on KZN and Mpumalanga with those findings.
And that is concerning. So what then should the Department of Basic Education do in this case? And I mean, do they have the will?
I'm certain that they have the will. It's embarrassing. It's impacted on all of those children, those 700 or whatever it was, who won't be getting their NSC as a result of the group copying. It's obvious that our systems work. We pick this up. It comes into marking centres. You can see when everyone has been given the same answer. So to teachers and to learners, don't partake in it. You're risking your futures. Your future as an educator and your future as a learner, because you now don't have a Matric certificate. Unati, the thing that I find really interesting about today's release is that, as far as I know, it's the first time we're seeing the National Certificate for Vocational right next to the National Senior Certificate. And I think that that's really heartening in understanding our concerns about who's getting through the system. Because we used to only really look at the schooling system, and we now also have the Department of Higher Education, the vocational colleges being reported in the same report. And that gives us a much better picture about how many young people are participating in education. It's been quite a contested space because it just wasn't reported in the same report. And I think it's the first time that we're now seeing those two numbers together.
Just going back to something that you've raised, and of course the CEO raising concerns about, the serious errors in several question papers which had a material impact on, learners' marks. I mean, should these kinds of things not be addressed in advance, or at least detected in advance? And also, what is the impact of this on the pupils themselves who are writing these exams?
So I'll answer both parts of your question. I think they're very important. Firstly, we should not be having these kind of errors. Examination boards and subject committees sit, lots of people look at things. You really can't expect that there's a currency conversion talking about the Palestine Mandate when that was something that happened in the 1919. And now you're looking at currency conversion at this point. It leads to confusion and stress for children in the exam. From Umalusi's side, they have excluded those 3 marks. I'm just using the maths literacy example. So it doesn't have a material effect, and everybody's been influenced by the error in the paper in the same way. So I think for the individual learners, it's a little bit of stress in the exam, trying to work something out and perhaps spend more time on it because it doesn't make sense. But to know that that's impacted everybody in the same way. From the system perspective, I think it does mean that we need to be more rigorous in our quality assurance processes, which start from the examining bodies, and there are 4 of them, very carefully going through exactly what is needed, and then the checks that follow internally in the particular body. DBE is the most significant one, as well as the Umalusi checks as they go along. What I think is good is that we have a body like Umalusi that investigates this, that we open to peer review. We have had Zambian colleagues overlooking what Umalusi does, and we're then transparently talking about this. I do quite a bit of work in other SADC countries. This doesn't happen. You don't get transparency about how marks have been adjusted, what problems there have been, expectations of how are you going to fix this, who do we exclude, who do we punish. So what we saw today is accountability in action, really.
Professor Roberts, thank you so much for your time and for speaking to us on the show today. That's Professor Nicky Roberts, Associate Professor at the University of Stellenbosch, of course, responding there to the Quality Education Assurance Body approving and the release of the 2023 National Senior Certificate for both private and public education bodies.